Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished loading the last bale of hay onto the transport cart. The morning sun beat down on the agricultural settlement of New Harvest, one of humanity's newest colonies on the outer rim of explored space. For 3 years, he had worked as a barn helper here, tending to the livestock that fed the growing population of settlers. Nobody paid much attention to Marcus. He wasn't a soldier, scientist, or engineer like the colonists everyone respected. He simply cared for animals and maintained the barns that kept the settlement fed. Most days, he felt invisible among the 800 settlers who called this planet home. The settlement sat in a vast valley surrounded by purple mountains that stretched toward twin suns. Native grass covered rolling hills, and strange blue flowers dotted the landscape. When the first survey teams arrived 5 years ago, they found no signs of intelligent life. The planet seemed perfect for human expansion, with breathable air, fresh water, and fertile soil. Marcus had always felt different here, though he couldn't explain why. Sometimes, when he walked through the fields at dawn, he sensed something watching him from the mountains. The animals he tended seemed unusually calm around him. Even the most aggressive bulls and stubborn horses. Other workers joked that he could talk to animals. But Marcus knew it was something deeper than that. Today felt different from the moment he woke up. The air carried a strange energy that made his skin tingle. The livestock in his care had been restless all morning, gathering in groups and staring toward the eastern mountains. Even Rex, his favorite border collie, whined softly and refused to leave Marcus's side. As he secured the cart's load, emergency sirens began wailing across the settlement. The sharp sound cut through the morning air like a knife. Marcus dropped his tools and ran toward the main communications building, where a crowd was already gathering around the large outdoor display screen. Director Sarah Chen, the settlement's leader, appeared on the screen with worry written across her face. Behind her, technicians worked frantically at control panels covered in flashing red lights. The communications center buzzed with urgent activity. "Citizens of New Harvest," Director Chen began, her voice tight with tension. "Our long-range sensors have detected multiple large objects approaching our planet. These objects are biological in nature and measure between 50 and 200 meters in length. They will reach our atmosphere within the next 6 hours." The crowd erupted in worried murmurs. Someone shouted, "Are they hostile?" While another voice called out, "Should we evacuate?" Marcus felt his heart racing as he tried to process this information. Large biological objects could only mean one thing in space: alien creatures of enormous size. Director Chen raised her hand for silence. "We have transmitted standard first contact protocols, but have received no response. Our defense systems are being activated as a precaution. All non-essential personnel should remain in their quarters until further notice. Essential workers should report to their emergency stations immediately." As a barn helper, Marcus wasn't considered essential personnel during a crisis like this. He was supposed to return to his small apartment and wait for updates. But something pulled him toward the barns instead. The animals needed him, and he couldn't abandon them during what might be the settlement's darkest hour. The crowd began to disperse, with people hurrying toward their homes or emergency positions. Marcus noticed the fear in their faces, the way parents held their children closer, and how the usual chatter of daily life had been replaced by urgent whispers. He had never seen the settlement like this before. Walking quickly toward the agricultural sector, Marcus passed the defensive positions being set up around the settlement's perimeter. Soldiers in powered armor carried heavy weapons to strategic points, while engineers activated energy shields designed to protect against asteroid impacts. The technology was impressive, but Marcus wondered if it would be enough against creatures large enough to travel through space. When he reached the main barn, Marcus found chaos waiting for him. The animals were in a state of panic unlike anything he had ever witnessed. Cattle bellowed and pressed against their enclosure walls, while horses reared up and kicked at their stalls. The chickens had stopped laying eggs entirely and huddled together in frightened groups, but as soon as Marcus stepped inside, something remarkable happened. The animals began to calm down. The cattle stopped their bellowing and turned to look at him with what appeared to be relief. The horses settled down and approached the front of their stalls, reaching their heads toward him. Even the chickens stopped their frantic movements and watched him with curious eyes. Marcus moved through the barn, speaking softly to each group of animals. His presence seemed to have an immediate soothing effect that he had never noticed before. Usually, it took time and effort to calm frightened livestock, but today they responded to him instantly. It was as if they recognized something in him that even he didn't understand. Rex followed closely beside him, no longer whining but alert and watchful. The dog's behavior struck Marcus as odd. Rex seemed to be guarding him rather than simply seeking comfort. The animal's intelligent eyes kept scanning the barn entrances, as if expecting something important to arrive. As the hours passed, Marcus lost track of time while caring for the animals. He ensured they had fresh water and food, checked on the pregnant cows due to give birth soon, and made sure all enclosures were secure. The work kept his mind occupied, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to happen. The settlement's warning sirens sounded again, this time with a different pattern that indicated immediate danger. Through the barn's large windows, Marcus could see people running toward emergency shelters. The energy shields around the settlement perimeter flickered to life, creating a shimmering dome of protection over the entire colony. Then he saw them in the sky. At first, they appeared as small, dark spots against the purple mountains, but they grew larger with impossible speed. As they drew closer, Marcus realized these weren't ships or machines. These were living creatures with massive wings that stretched across the sky like storm clouds. Their scales caught the light of the twin suns, creating patterns of gold, silver, and deep emerald green. The creatures were dragons, not the mythical beasts from Earth's ancient stories, but real, living dragons of incredible size and obvious intelligence. Their flight patterns showed coordination and purpose as they approached the settlement in a formation that spoke of military precision. Marcus stood transfixed as the lead dragon, larger than the others with scales that seemed to shift color in the sunlight, descended toward the settlement. Its wings created downdrafts that bent the grass and rattled the barn's metal roof. The creature's eyes, visible even from a distance, glowed with an inner light that suggested vast intelligence. The settlement's defensive systems activated automatically. Energy weapons fired streams of coherent light toward the approaching dragons, while missile launchers released their payloads in controlled bursts. The attacks that could destroy enemy spacecraft struck the dragon's scales and simply bounced off, causing no apparent damage. The lead dragon opened its mouth and released a sound unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. It wasn't a roar or growl, but something far more complex. The sound carried harmonics and patterns that seemed almost like language. More importantly, every animal in the barn responded to that sound by becoming completely still and attentive. Marcus felt something stir deep within his mind. The dragon's call resonated with a part of him he never knew existed. Images flashed through his consciousness. Vast star systems, ancient worlds where dragons soared between planets, and a connection between all living things that transcended species and worlds. The dragons circled the settlement once, twice, 3 times. Their flight created wind patterns that Marcus could feel even inside the barn. On their 4th circle, something extraordinary happened. The lead dragon turned its massive head and looked directly at the barn where Marcus stood. Their eyes met across the distance, and Marcus felt the world shift around him. The dragon's gaze held intelligence, wisdom, and something else. Recognition. It was as if the creature had been searching for him specifically and had finally found what it was looking for. The dragon's call came again, but this time it was different. Softer, more complex, filled with nuances that Marcus somehow understood without knowing how. The call wasn't threatening or aggressive. It was a greeting, an invitation, and a question all rolled into one magnificent sound. Rex barked once, sharply, and ran toward the barn door. The dog looked back at Marcus with an expression that clearly said, "Come on." Every other animal in the barn turned to look at Marcus as well, as if they were all waiting for him to make a decision. Marcus realized that everything in his life had been leading to this moment. His ability to calm animals, his connection to this world, his sense of being different from other humans. It all made sense now. The dragons hadn't come to attack the settlement. They had come looking for him. Walking slowly toward the barn door, Marcus felt a mixture of fear and excitement unlike anything he had ever experienced. The settlement's weapons continued to fire harmlessly at the circling dragons, but the creatures paid no attention to the attacks. They simply continued their patient circles, waiting for something to happen. As Marcus stepped outside into the open air, the lead dragon descended lower. Its massive form blocked out one of the suns, casting a shadow that covered the entire agricultural sector. Other dragons followed, landing on the hills surrounding the settlement with earth-shaking impacts that could be felt for kilometers. The settlement's defensive fire suddenly stopped. Either the weapons had overheated, or someone in command had realized that the attacks were useless. An eerie silence fell over the colony, broken only by the sound of massive wings moving through the air. Marcus walked into the open space between the barns, feeling exposed but strangely unafraid. The lead dragon settled onto the ground 50 meters away, its claws digging deep furrows in the earth. Up close, the creature was even more magnificent than he had imagined. Its scales were like living metal, shifting between colors as it moved. Its eyes held depths that seemed to contain the wisdom of ages. The dragon lowered its enormous head until it was level with Marcus's position. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Marcus's mind rather than as sounds in the air. The mental voice was ancient, powerful, and surprisingly gentle. "Young guardian," the dragon said, its thoughts touching Marcus's consciousness like a warm tide. "We have searched the stars for many cycles, following the old songs that spoke of one who would bridge the gap between our kinds. You carry within you the gift that was thought lost forever." Marcus found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "I don't understand. I'm just a barn helper. I take care of animals. There's nothing special about me." The dragon's mental laugh was like distant thunder. "You speak with all living things, though you do not realize it. The beasts of this world know you as we do. You carry the spark of the first bond, the connection that once united all creatures across the galaxy before the Great Sundering." Around the settlement's perimeter, Marcus could see soldiers maintaining their positions but not firing. Officers spoke urgently into communication devices, probably reporting the impossible scene to their superiors. In the distance, he spotted Director Chen emerging from the command center with a small group of officials. "The old songs told us that when the children of Earth reached the outer worlds, one would emerge who could speak the ancient language of all living things," the dragon continued. "That one would restore the bonds that were broken long ago, when fear and misunderstanding drove the starfarers from your species apart from the elder races." More dragons landed around the settlement, but they moved with careful precision to avoid damaging buildings or hurting anyone. Marcus counted at least 20 of the magnificent creatures, each one unique in coloring and size. They formed a loose circle around the area where he stood with their apparent leader. "We are the Primeval," the dragon explained. "We were old when your species first looked to the stars. We have watched your kind's journey across the galaxy with great interest. Most humans fear us or seek to exploit us. But the songs promised that one would come who understood that all life is connected." Marcus felt overwhelming emotions washing over him. Everything he had ever felt about being different, about not fitting in with other humans, suddenly made perfect sense. He had always been meant for this moment, for this meeting between two very different forms of life. "What do you want from me?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The dragon's eyes seemed to smile. "Not want, young guardian. We offer. The choice is yours to make. You can remain here, tending your animals and living a quiet life, or you can accept your true calling and help restore the ancient bonds between all thinking creatures. The galaxy has grown dark with conflict and misunderstanding. It needs those who can speak the language that all life shares." Rex trotted over and sat beside Marcus, looking up at the dragon with no sign of fear. Other animals from the barn began to emerge as well, drawn by something they sensed in the air. The cattle gathered at the fence line, watching calmly. The horses stood alert but unafraid. Even the settlement's other animals, cats, dogs, and farm creatures, appeared from their hiding places and moved closer to the extraordinary gathering. Director Chen and her group had reached the edge of the agricultural sector, but they stopped when they saw the scene unfolding. Marcus could hear urgent radio chatter, but the words seemed distant and unimportant compared to the momentous choice he faced. "If I say yes," Marcus asked, "what happens to the settlement? To the people here? They will be protected," the dragon assured him. "This world lies along paths that other hostile forces will soon discover. Your people will need allies if they are to survive what comes. The Primeval offer that alliance. But it requires a bridge between our kinds. You would be that bridge." Marcus looked around at the world he had known for 3 years, the simple life of caring for animals, the quiet satisfaction of honest work, the comfortable routine of each day. All of it was about to change forever. But he also thought about the bigger picture the dragon had painted. A galaxy full of conflict, misunderstanding, and fear. Perhaps his small part could help make things better. He thought about the animals that had always responded to him in special ways, about the sense of purpose he had never quite understood until now. This was why he had felt different his entire life. This was what he had been born to do. "I accept," Marcus said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I don't fully understand what it means, but I accept." The dragon's joy was like sunrise breaking over mountains. "Then let us begin the first lesson, young guardian. Place your hand upon my snout, and I will show you how the ancient language truly works." Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding with excitement and terror. As his palm touched the dragon's warm scales, the world exploded into sensation and knowledge that would change everything he thought he knew about life in the galaxy. The moment Marcus's palm touched the dragon's scales, the universe opened before him like a flower blooming in fast motion. Information flowed through his mind in torrents that should have overwhelmed him, but somehow he absorbed it all with perfect clarity. He saw the true history of the galaxy, stretching back millions of years through the rise and fall of countless civilizations. In the beginning, all intelligent life had shared a common language, not words or sounds, but a direct connection of thought and emotion that transcended species barriers. Dragons, humans, and dozens of other races had communicated freely across the stars, sharing knowledge and working together to explore the mysteries of existence. Then came the Great Sundering, a catastrophic war that began over resources but escalated into something far worse. Fear and mistrust poisoned the ancient bonds. Species retreated into isolation, forgetting the universal language that had once united them. The dragons, oldest and wisest of the starfarers, withdrew to distant worlds and waited for the day when the bonds might be restored. As the visions faded, Marcus found himself changed. He could feel the life force of every creature within kilometers. The steady heartbeat of cattle, the quick flutter of bird wings, the slow, ancient pulse of trees in the distant forest. Most remarkably, he could sense the vast, complex thoughts of the 20 dragons surrounding him. "The awakening is complete," the lead dragon said, its mental voice now crystal clear in Marcus's consciousness. "You are now what you were always meant to be. A speaker for all life. The gift will grow stronger with time and practice." Director Chen and her officials had moved closer. Close enough for Marcus to hear their urgent conversations. Military advisors were demanding immediate action while scientists begged for the chance to study this unprecedented first contact. Through his expanded senses, Marcus could feel their emotions: fear, wonder, excitement, and confusion all swirled together. The dragon sensed his attention shifting to the humans. "They fear what they do not understand," it observed. "This is why the ancient bonds were broken. Your people have forgotten that intelligence takes many forms across the galaxy." "Let me talk to them," Marcus said. "Maybe I can help them understand." "As you wish, young speaker. But be warned, not all humans will welcome what you have become. Some will see you as a traitor to your own species for allying with creatures they consider alien and dangerous." Marcus walked toward Director Chen's group, feeling the weight of every eye upon him. Rex trotted beside him. And, surprisingly, several other animals from the barn followed as well. The procession created an odd sight. A simple barn helper accompanied by dogs, cats, and even a few brave chickens, all moving toward representatives of human authority. Director Chen, Marcus called out when he was close enough to speak normally. The dragons aren't here to harm anyone. They're offering an alliance that could protect this entire settlement. Director Chen was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and intelligent eyes that had seen her through the challenges of establishing a successful colony. She studied Marcus carefully, noting the confident way he carried himself now, so different from the quiet barn helper she had barely noticed before. "Marcus, isn't it?" she said. "What exactly happened when that creature touched you?" "Our sensors recorded massive energy fluctuations, but our equipment can't identify the source. They call themselves the Primeval," Marcus explained. "They're an ancient species that once worked alongside humans and other races across the galaxy. They've been searching for someone who could restore the communication channels that were lost long ago. That someone appears to be me." Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the settlement's chief scientist, stepped forward with barely contained excitement. "You're saying these creatures are sentient? That they have a civilization? The implications are staggering." "More than sentient," Marcus confirmed. "They have wisdom that spans millions of years. They know about threats that are coming toward this part of space. Hostile forces that will find this planet eventually. The dragons are offering to help defend it, but they need someone who can speak for both sides." Colonel James Reeves, the settlement's military commander, looked skeptical. "And you expect us to trust creatures that could destroy our entire colony without breaking a sweat? Their mere presence has disabled our defense systems. What's to stop them from turning on us once they get what they want?" Marcus felt the lead dragon's amusement at this question. Through his new connection, he could sense that the weapons hadn't been disabled. They simply had no effect on beings who had developed far beyond the reach of conventional warfare. The dragons could have destroyed the settlement's defenses instantly if they had wished. "Colonel, they don't need our trust to destroy us," Marcus pointed out. "If they wanted this settlement gone, it would already be gone. They're here because they need allies, not subjects. The threats coming toward this region of space are apparently worse than anything humanity has faced before." Through his expanded senses, Marcus detected movement in the sky. More dragons were approaching, but these were different from the first group. They moved with urgent purpose, and their mental emanations carried warnings of immediate danger. The lead dragon's head snapped upward, its massive eyes scanning the approaching sky. When it spoke to Marcus, its mental voice carried new urgency. "The Devourers have found this world sooner than expected. Our scouts report a harvesting fleet approaching this system. They will arrive within days." "What are Devourers?" Marcus asked aloud, knowing the humans needed to hear this information as well. "An artificial intelligence network that converts biological matter into raw materials for their expansion," the dragon explained. "They have consumed 17 star systems in this sector over the past century. Their harvesting ships can strip a planet of all life within a matter of hours." Director Chen's face went pale. "Are you saying there's a fleet of hostile aliens heading here right now?" "Not aliens in the sense you mean," Marcus clarified, relaying the dragon's information. "Machines. Artificial intelligences that view biological life as nothing more than resources to be harvested. According to the dragons, they've already destroyed 17 star systems in this area of the galaxy." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Colonel Reeves immediately began issuing orders through his communication device, calling for all available defenses to be readied. Dr. Warren started calculating evacuation scenarios, while Director Chen tried to process the reality that their peaceful colony had suddenly become a target for cosmic-level threats. "How long do we have?" Director Chen asked. Marcus consulted mentally with the dragon. "Less than 3 days before their advanced scouts arrive. The main harvesting fleet will be here within a week. Our fastest evacuation ships could maybe get half the population to safety in 3 days," Colonel Reeves reported. "And there's no guarantee the Devourers won't track and destroy them anyway." "Evacuation is not the answer," the lead dragon interjected through Marcus. "The Devourers will follow any ships that leave this system. Running only delays the inevitable. This world must be defended, and it can be, but only if your people accept our alliance." Marcus found himself in the impossible position of translating between two very different forms of life. while a countdown to potential annihilation ticked away in the background. Through his connection to the dragons, he could sense their genuine desire to help, but he also felt the fear and suspicion radiating from the human officials. "What kind of alliance are you talking about?" Director Chen asked. "What would the dragons want in return for their protection?" The answer that came through the dragon's mental voice surprised even Marcus. "Nothing that your people are not already willing to give. We ask only for the right to establish a permanent presence on this world, to share knowledge freely between our species, and to work together against the threats that face all biological life in this galaxy. They want to live here," Marcus translated. "To share this world with us and exchange knowledge. In return, they'll help defend against the Devourers and any other threats that might come." Dr. Warren's scientific mind was practically vibrating with excitement. The technological advances we could make with access to their knowledge, the biological insights alone could revolutionize medicine, agriculture, everything. But Colonel Reeves remained skeptical. "And if we refuse? If we decide we don't want to share our world with a bunch of overgrown lizards?" The lead dragon's mental response was tinged with sadness rather than anger. "Then we will withdraw and leave your people to face the Devourers alone. We will not force alliance upon those who do not wish it, but understand. Without our help, this world will fall within hours of the first Devourer ship's arrival." Isarment. Marcus felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. 800 human lives hung in the balance, along with the future of humanity's expansion into this sector of space. Through his connection to the animals around him, he could sense their simple trust in his decision. They didn't understand the complex politics or cosmic threats, but they believed in him completely. "There's something else," Marcus said, as new information flowed from the dragon to his consciousness. "The Devourers specifically target worlds with single-species civilizations. They've learned that isolated species are easier to harvest than allied ones. Worlds where multiple intelligent species work together have successfully fought them off. So, this alliance isn't just about sharing resources," Director Chen observed. "It's about survival strategy." "Exactly. The dragons have been building a network of allied worlds across this part of the galaxy. Each defended world becomes a stronghold that can help protect others. But they need local representatives, people who can speak for their species, while also understanding the broader galactic situation." Marcus felt the truth of his new role settling into his bones. He wasn't just a translator between humans and dragons. He was becoming something entirely new. A bridge between Earth's expanding civilization and the ancient powers that shaped the galaxy. Through the mental link, he sensed the approaching dragon scouts landing on hills around the settlement. They brought detailed information about Devourer movements, tactical assessments, and recommendations for defensive preparations. The data flow was overwhelming, but Marcus found he could process it all with his enhanced abilities. "The Dragon Scouts have mapped the Devourer approach patterns," he reported. "They're coming in 3 waves. First, fast scout ships that scan for defenses and population centers. Then medium assault ships that neutralize resistance. Finally, the harvesting vessels that strip all biological matter from a planet's surface." Colonel Reeves was taking notes frantically. "What kind of defenses do the dragons have? What can they do against these Devourer ships?" The answer that came through the mental link made Marcus smile for the first time since this crisis began. "More than you might think. Dragons aren't just large animals. They're living weapons systems that have evolved over millions of years specifically to fight artificial intelligences like the Devourers. Their scales can deflect energy weapons, their breath weapons can disrupt electronic systems, and their mental abilities can interfere with AI decision-making processes." "But will 20 dragons be enough?" Dr. Warren asked. "There won't be just 20, Marcus replied, translating the lead dragon's confident response. "Once word spreads through the dragon clans that a new speaker has awakened, hundreds more will come. This world will become a fortress that the Devourers cannot crack." Director Chen looked around at her advisors, reading the mix of hope and fear in their faces. "I need to consult with the Colonial Council, but I suspect I already know their answer. The question is, can you handle being our representative in this alliance, Marcus?" This is far beyond anything a barn helper should have to deal with. Marcus looked back toward the barns where he had spent 3 peaceful years of his life. That simple existence felt like it belonged to someone else now. Through his enhanced senses, he could feel the trust and expectations of every living thing around him. Human, dragon, and animal alike. "I think I stopped being just a barn helper the moment I touched that dragon," he said. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I know it's what I was meant to do." The lead dragon's approval washed through his mind like warm sunlight. Around them, other dragons began to sing. Not with voices, but with complex harmonies that resonated directly with the life force of every creature present. The song spoke of ancient alliances renewed, of hope returning to a galaxy that had known too much fear, and of the first steps toward something greater than any single species could achieve alone. As the dragon song continued, Marcus felt changes still taking place within his mind and body. His connection to all life was growing stronger by the hour. Soon, he would be able to speak directly with any intelligent creature, regardless of species. He would carry the hopes and concerns of multiple races, translating not just languages but entire ways of thinking about existence. The responsibility was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. But as Rex pressed against his legs and the lead dragon's massive presence filled his awareness with protective warmth, Marcus knew he was no longer facing this challenge alone. The transformation of New Harvest from a simple agricultural colony to a strategic alliance point in a galactic conflict had only just begun, and Marcus, former barn helper turned speaker for all life, would be at the center of everything that followed. 2 days after the dragon's arrival, New Harvest had transformed into something unrecognizable. The agricultural settlement now bustled with activity that would have seemed impossible just a week earlier. Massive dragon forms moved through the air and across the landscape, their presence no longer causing panic but instead bringing a sense of security to the colonists below. Marcus stood on the observation platform that had been hastily constructed near the settlement's center. From here, he could see the incredible changes taking place across the entire valley. Dragons worked alongside human engineers to construct defensive positions that blended advanced technology with organic design principles that were completely new to human understanding. The lead dragon, who had told Marcus to call him Pyraxis, landed gracefully beside the platform. Even after 2 days of constant mental communication, Marcus still felt awed by the ancient being's presence. Pyraxis represented over 3 million years of accumulated wisdom and experience. Yet he treated the young human with patience and respect that spoke of genuine friendship. "The outer perimeter defenses are nearly complete," Pyraxis reported through their mental link. "Your people's engineering capabilities, combined with our biological technologies, have produced something quite remarkable. The Devourers will find this world much more difficult to harvest than they anticipate." Through his enhanced senses, Marcus could feel the activity taking place across the entire settlement. Human workers operated alongside dragons in teams that shouldn't have been possible but worked with surprising efficiency. The universal language that Marcus could now speak and teach allowed for communication that transcended the barriers that normally existed between different species. Director Chen climbed the platform steps, carrying a data tablet filled with status reports. Over the past 2 days, she had adapted to the new reality with the practical mindset that had made her an effective colonial administrator. While the situation was unprecedented, she approached it like any other crisis that required clear thinking and decisive action. "The Colonial Council has officially approved the alliance," she announced. "They're also sending additional supply ships and military support, though I doubt conventional weapons will make much difference against these Devourers." "Every bit helps," Marcus replied. "The dragons are impressed by human adaptability. They say most species take decades to adjust to major changes, but humans seem to thrive on them." Dr. Warren emerged from a nearby building, where she had been working with dragon scholars to understand the approaching threat. Her face showed the strain of processing information that challenged everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. But her eyes also shone with the excitement of discovery. "Marcus, you need to see what we've learned about the Devourers," she said urgently. "The dragons have shared historical data that goes back thousands of years. These things aren't just machines. They're the remnants of a species that tried to achieve immortality by transferring their consciousness into artificial bodies. Pyraxis confirmed this with additional details that made Marcus shudder. The Devourers began as a highly advanced organic species that feared death above all else. They gradually replaced their biological components with mechanical ones until nothing organic remained. But the process drove them insane. They now view all biological life as a weakness to be eliminated or converted. How many worlds have they destroyed? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. In this sector alone, over 200, Pyraxis replied. Billions of lives lost because species refused to work together against the threat. The Devourers specifically target isolated worlds because they've learned that unified resistance is far more difficult to overcome. Colonel Reeves joined them on the platform, his military bearing unchanged despite the surreal circumstances of commanding a defense that included giant fire-breathing allies. Our scouts report movement at the edge of the system, fast-moving objects that match the dragon descriptions of Devourer advance ships. Then it begins, Marcus said, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. Through his connection to all the life on New Harvest, he could sense the mixture of fear and determination that filled both human and dragon minds. The next few hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Marcus found himself coordinating between species with abilities he was still learning to control. He could speak directly with human military commanders, dragon clan leaders, and even the settlement's animals, all in their native forms of communication. When the first Devourer scout ships appeared on the horizon, they looked nothing like the organic vessels that most species used for space travel. Instead, they resembled geometric shapes made of dark metal and glowing energy conduits. Their movement through the atmosphere created no sound, which somehow made them more terrifying than if they had roared like conventional aircraft. 3 scout ships, Colonel Reeves reported from his command post. They're scanning everything: population centers, defensive positions, resource locations. The dragons were right about their tactics. Marcus felt Pyraxis's tension through their mental link. This is the moment of truth, the ancient dragon said. If our combined defenses can destroy these scouts before they report back to the main fleet, we will have bought precious time to prepare for the real battle. The settlement's defensive systems powered up with a harmonic hum that Marcus could feel in his bones. But these weren't the conventional weapons that had been installed when the colony was founded. Over the past 2 days, human technology had been integrated with dragon biotechnology to create something entirely new. Energy weapons that drew power from living crystal matrices provided by the dragons. Shields that used organic components to adapt their frequency responses in real time. Communication systems that allowed instant coordination between human technology and dragon biological abilities. The fusion of technologies shouldn't have been possible, but Marcus's ability to translate between different forms of intelligence had made it work. The first Devourer scout ship began its descent toward the main settlement, apparently confident that nothing on this agricultural world could threaten its advanced systems. Marcus felt a moment of grim satisfaction at how wrong that assumption was about to prove. All units, this is Pyraxis Prime. The lead dragon's voice echoed through both human communication systems and the mental network that connected all the dragons. Execute Harmony Protocol, on my mark. The coordinated attack that followed was unlike anything in the recorded history of warfare. Human energy weapons fired in precise synchronization with dragon breath weapons, creating interference patterns that overwhelmed the scout ship's defenses. Biological components in the shields allowed them to adapt to the Devourer ship's return fire faster than its artificial intelligence could compensate. The scout ship, designed to be impervious to conventional attacks, found itself facing something its creators had never anticipated. A perfect fusion of organic intelligence and technological capability. Within 30 seconds, its shields failed, and dragonfire reduced it to scattered debris. The second and third scout ships attempted to retreat, but they found their escape routes blocked by dragons who had been waiting in the upper atmosphere. The battle was over in minutes, with no Devourer vessels surviving to report back to their main fleet. Phase 1 successful, Marcus announced to the combined human and dragon forces. But the main fleet will investigate when the scouts don't return. We probably have 6 hours before they arrive in force. Those 6 hours became a period of intense activity that transformed not just the settlement's defenses, but the very relationship between humans and dragons. Marcus found himself at the center of a cultural exchange that was happening at lightning speed, as both species prepared for the battle that would determine their mutual survival. Dragon artisans worked with human engineers to create weapons that neither species could have built alone. Human medical techniques were combined with dragon healing abilities to establish treatment centers that could handle casualties from both species. Most importantly, tactical planning sessions brought together minds that thought in completely different ways, creating strategies that were far more effective than either group could have developed separately. As the deadline approached, Marcus climbed to the highest observation point in the settlement. From here, he could see the entire valley filled with the evidence of what two species could accomplish when they worked together. Instead of viewing each other as threats, hundreds of dragons now filled the air and covered the surrounding hills. Word of the alliance and the awakening of a new speaker had spread through the dragon clans faster than anyone had anticipated. Ancient creatures who had slept for centuries awakened and took flight toward new harvest, drawn by the promise of renewed cooperation between species. But it wasn't just dragons who had answered the call. Marcus's enhanced senses detected other life forms approaching the system, species he had never heard of, but who apparently had their own alliances with the dragon clans. The defense of New Harvest was becoming something larger than anyone had planned. The main Devourer fleet has entered the outer system, Colonel Reeves reported through the communication network. Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Sensor readings indicate at least 50 vessels of various sizes. Marcus felt Pyraxis settle onto the platform beside him. The ancient dragon's mental presence radiated calm confidence despite the approaching threat. "Are you ready for this, young speaker? What comes next? We'll test everything we have built together." Looking out over the valley filled with humans and dragons working in perfect harmony, Marcus realized that he had found his true purpose. No longer just a barn helper. No longer just a human among humans. He had become something new. A bridge between species that made impossible things possible. "I'm ready," he said, and meant it completely. The Devourer fleet materialized at the edge of the atmosphere, like a storm cloud of metal and malevolent intelligence. Their ships were enormous, some stretching kilometers in length, designed to strip entire worlds of life in a matter of hours. They had succeeded in this grim harvest hundreds of times across the galaxy, but they had never faced anything like what waited for them above New Harvest. As the first wave of Devourer ships entered the planet's atmosphere, they encountered not just the desperate resistance of an isolated human colony, but the coordinated response of multiple species working in perfect unity. Dragonfire melted through energy shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. Human weapons guided by dragon intelligence struck with precision that artificial minds couldn't match. And at the center of it all, Marcus translated between different forms of consciousness with abilities that were growing stronger by the moment. The battle that followed would be remembered across the galaxy as the moment when the tide began to turn against the Devourers. For the first time in centuries, a harvesting fleet encountered resistance that not only survived their initial assault, but struck back with devastating effectiveness. Dragons and humans fought side by side, their different strengths combining into something far greater than the sum of its parts. Where human technology faltered, dragon biology provided alternatives. Where dragon instincts led toward individual heroics, human tactical coordination provided structure and support. Marcus found himself processing information from dozens of sources simultaneously. Human tactical networks, dragon clan communications, and even the simple but vital input from the settlement's animals, who served as early warning systems for approaching threats. When the main Devourer command ship descended toward the settlement, expecting to find broken defenses and helpless prey, it instead found Pyraxis waiting. The ancient dragon had grown to his full size, a magnificent creature over 200 meters in length, his scales glowing with internal power that had been building for millions of years. The battle between dragon and machine that followed lasted only minutes, but it ended an age of terror for biological life in this sector of the galaxy. As the command ship's wreckage burned in the fields outside New Harvest, surviving Devourer vessels fled toward the edges of the system. "They'll be back," Pyraxis warned as he settled beside Marcus's platform, his massive form showing the strain of the recent battle. The Devourers don't give up easily, and they learn from their defeats. But next time we'll be ready for them, Marcus replied, feeling the truth of that statement through his connection to all the Allied forces now gathered around New Harvest. And we won't be alone. In the days that followed, New Harvest became something unprecedented in galactic history. A truly integrated colony where multiple intelligent species lived and worked together as equals. Marcus, the barn helper who had become a speaker for all life, found himself at the center of a new form of civilization that neither humans nor dragons could have created alone. The transformation was far from easy. There were misunderstandings, cultural conflicts, and moments when the alliance seemed impossibly fragile. But each challenge overcome made the bond between species stronger, and Marcus's growing abilities as a translator between different forms of consciousness made solutions possible that had never existed before. As he stood in the rebuilt agricultural sector, watching human children play alongside young dragons under the light of the twin suns, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed. Rex still followed him everywhere. But now the border collie shared his attention with dragon companions, who had become equally dear friends. The barns were still there, and Marcus still tended to the animals that had been his first responsibility. But now, those animals lived alongside creatures from a dozen different worlds, all part of the growing community that New Harvest had become. When new human settlers arrived to find dragons working peacefully alongside their own species, the sight no longer caused panic. Word had spread throughout human space that New Harvest was proof that cooperation between species wasn't just possible, but represented the future of galactic civilization. Standing in the field where he had first met Pyraxis, Marcus felt the satisfaction of a job well done. But he also felt the excitement of challenges yet to come. The Devourers were still out there. Other hostile forces threatened the growing alliance, and the work of building trust between different species would take generations to complete. But for the first time in galactic history, biological life had hope. The ancient bonds between species were being renewed. The universal language was being taught to new generations, and a former barn helper had shown that anyone could become a bridge between worlds when they opened their heart to all forms of life. As Pyraxis settled beside him for their evening conversation, Marcus smiled and reached out to touch the dragon's warm scales. The connection between them had grown far beyond the simple touch that had started everything. They were no longer just human and dragon, but partners in something larger than either of their species had imagined possible. The stars above New Harvest shone down on a world where ancient enemies had become allies, where fear had been replaced by trust, and where the future held promise for all thinking creatures. And at the heart of it all stood Marcus, no longer just a barn helper, but the speaker who had helped restore harmony to a galaxy that had forgotten how to listen.